Gardening Gracefully family. This is Rebecca. It's a dreary day, so I'm going to try to get this done quickly. But I wanted to show you guys how to trim scapes off of hardneck garlic. Hardneck garlic specifically takes between 150 to 210 days to harvest. I'm right at that point where all of this garlic is going to be ready to harvest soon. Let me come back. Okay, so I have an awesome cameraman today. My sweet husband, Steven, is behind the camera. This right here is a scape, okay? Right here is basically where it would bud and it would flower. And when it gets to this point, especially when it starts to curl, you want to trim these scapes off because you want all of that power to go down into the bulb and not into flowering, okay? So you get as close as you can to cut that scape off. You can actually eat these scapes. I've never eaten them, but I hear that that's what I hear. So we will see, because I think I'm going to try it out. I've got a couple of more. I've got one here. And again, you just trim it as close as you can, just like that, okay? This would have been where the flower came out. So instead of putting all that energy in there, it's now going to put it down into the bulb. And in probably the next 5 days, I am actually going to get most of this garlic out. Most of it looks like it's pretty ready. I'm at right about 195 days, and so I'm getting on that far end of the 210 days that garlic takes. And that's in primo condition, because garlic can take longer or shorter, and there are a few of these that are going to take a little bit longer that I'm not going to pull out. So let me trim another scape for you guys to show y'all. Let me come right up here. This one has not really curled yet, but I'm going to go ahead and trim it because it's already getting a little dead on the bottom. The dead leaves at the bottom of garlic, and you kind of see the tips getting dead. You know that your garlic is going to be getting close to harvesting. And so you want to make sure the scapes are taken off and that you have just a few more days before you finally are able to harvest that garlic. So I was doing a tester run on my garlic about a week and a half ago, and I decided to pull 2 of them up, and here is one of the ones that I pulled up. That's a pretty good sized chunk of garlic. I mean, that's really, really good. And so I think that my garlic is pretty ready to be pulled up. Most of it is. Some of it may not be, and I may leave those in there, but I do need to get some of those out of there before the next rain comes. So I planted garlic back in October of last year, around the beginning of October. Garlic really likes slightly acidic soil, so a pH between 6 and 7 is good for it. It takes about 180 days to 210 days to perfectly grow garlic, I guess you could say, but only if you have perfect conditions. And here in Texas, we have not had perfect conditions at all. Garlic's pretty hardy over the winter, so if you have a really big freeze like we had here in Texas, we called it Snowmageddon, something that we don't generally get down to 0 degrees for an extended period of time. We had a really hard freeze, and it did not affect my garlic at all. However, the last 2 weeks it's been nonstop rain, and that can affect your garlic. It can make it rot in the ground. It can make the cloves come apart if you leave them in there too long. So what happens is you can't store it for several months. You'll have to use that garlic right away. Well, I really would like to have some garlic to be able to store for a little while. So I'm going to go ahead and harvest. You would normally harvest garlic during a dry spell. That way it can cure in the ground for a little bit, and that way you don't have to do as much curing on the outside, and it can kind of harness some of that flavor from the stems and the stalks and things and get it down into the bulb. Unfortunately, we haven't had a dry spell, so I don't have the opportunity to do that. And we have about 2 days where it's not going to be raining, and then we have rain all again next week. And I don't want to risk losing my garlic and it coming apart or rotting in the ground because of all this rain. Now, I think some of them are not ready, and I have not taken the scapes off of some of them. So those will stay in the ground. However, the ones I took the scapes off of about a week and a half ago, I'm going to go ahead and pull those guys up. I think a sure tell sign that you know that your garlic is pretty close to being done is when some of the leaves are browned around the edges, and 3 or 4 leaves will be browned or starting to kind of die off, and then you have some green ones still left on the stalk. That's when you know you need to be harvesting your garlic. That's the best time to harvest it. It's not a perfect science because garlic is in the ground, so really the best way to tell is pulling a couple up and see if they're ready, if they're big, if they're still together and intact, to make sure you didn't go too long. When you pull the garlic out of the ground, you don't pull it by the stalk. This stalk right here, you don't pull it by this. It's not like an onion where you can just grab it and yank it out. Garlic will just separate from this, and then you won't be able to store it for a long-term storage. So you want to use one of these little hand forks or one of these garden forks to get your garlic out. Do not use a shovel. The shovel can break your garlic apart, it can bruise it, it can damage it, and if the garlic inside is damaged, then you cannot store it for long-term use. Now, on here, each one of these leaves right here, each one of these on the stalk is part of that papery husk that you see that kind of crumples apart, that's on the outside of the garlic. That's what each one of these layers is. So your garlic is going to have about 10 layers of that papery husk. Once garlic is out, you should just brush the dirt off as much as you can, but do not wash your garlic. If you want it to last and not get mildew or get gross, and you want it to be able to store well, then you need to just brush it off. I personally use a little paper towel and wipe it off. Not wet, it's dry, and the dirt comes off pretty easily. So once you are done harvesting your garlic, you're going to want to cure it. And curing can take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month or two, depending on how humid it is, what kind of conditions you've cured it in. You are going to want to cure your garlic in a cool blow. I personally like to put a fan on my garlic so that it can dry out a little bit more quickly, but you need to make sure it's well ventilated. You want to leave the roots, the stalks, and the leaves all intact while it's curing until it's completely dried. Simply put, that bulb is still getting flavor and nutrients and everything from the roots, from the stalks, and it just helps it cure better so that you're not cutting it up and causing any germs or anything that could potentially get into your garlic. I use a wire basket to store my garlic in and kind of keep a fan blowing on it while it's curing in the dark. You don't want to put it in the sun. You don't want to set it out in the sun. First of all, garlic can get a sunburn, and it will basically make your garlic not being able to be used. It'll make it kind of blackened and rotten in that area. So you don't want to put it in the sunshine at all. You want to store it in a cool, dark spot. Garlic will lose its flavor in the sun. When it's in the dark room or a dark area, it actually holds its flavor on, and that's exactly what you want. You want to wait until all your leaves are dried, completely dried out. Now these are not all dried on this one. These are not all dried. So you want to wait until they're all completely dried before you actually store your garlic. You want to continue the curing process until they're all completely dry. I still have a little bit in here that is wet. This has taken a week and a half with a fan blowing on it, a box fan. So that kind of gives you an idea. Now I don't plan on actually curing that one. I actually plan on using that one. So that's kind of, when it's in the dark room or a dark area, it actually holds its flavor on, and that's exactly what you want. You want to wait until all your leaves are dried, completely dried out. Now these are not all dried on this one. These are not all dried. So you want to wait until they're all completely dried before you actually store your garlic. You want to continue the curing process until they're all completely dry. I still have a little bit in here that is wet. This has taken a week and a half with a fan blowing on it, a box fan. So that kind of gives you an idea. Now I don't plan on actually curing that one. I actually plan on using that one. So that's kind of the plan there. What's great about hardneck garlic is well, any garlic really, but hardneck garlic specifically can be stored for up to about 5 months. Softneck can be stored up to about 7 or 8 months. And you can actually store hardneck garlic right at your freezing temperature, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and you can get it to last up to 7 months by doing that. That's going to be the longest that you can really store hardneck garlic, but that way you have it, you know, the garlic that you grew all year, and then by the time it's time to plant your next harvest, you're only going really. Alright, so I'm going to attempt to pull out this garlic right here. If you see, right here, it has some leaves that are dying back, and some of them that are really getting crispy on the edges, which is what we want. We already have a couple that are completely dead down here. So this is a good time to harvest this garlic. I'm just going to gently use my little garden fork here to go around the bulb to make sure that I'm not damaging the bulb in any way, because it's probably about, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches in the ground. So it's not like an onion where you can just yank that onion out. You got to be gentle with it and not scrape it. Oh wow. Let's see if we can get this guy. Oh, this guy's not as big as some of the other ones I have, but he's pretty good size. Alright, I'm going to check this guy out here. Let's see if he's ready for me. These are about the size of normal garlic heads. The last two that I got a week and a half ago were about twice that. One of the things I wanted to mention in here is that garlic is highly toxic to cats and dogs. So wherever you store it, make sure it's not stored near your animals or where they can get it. Or if your dog likes to dig up your garlic, make sure that she's not eating it or anything like that. Our dog at the very beginning wanted to keep tearing up this one corner that she would always put her treats in, and we had to kind of deter her from doing that so that she wouldn't get sick from the garlic. So that's something to think about whenever you're growing garlic. So I ended up harvesting about 5 bulbs of garlic. I realized that maybe some of those were not quite ready yet, and I want to go ahead and wait until next week's rainfall, and maybe we will get a dry spell, which will be really helpful if we do. And so I went ahead and harvested those 5. They're about this size, which is pretty good. They're not as big as the first 2 that I originally pulled out, which is interesting. I'm wondering if them being on the corner or the edge of the in-ground bed, that maybe they got more nutrients right there, and as I went further in, I noticed they were not getting as big as the ones I had pulled 2 weeks ago. So I don't think they're quite ready. I'm going to go ahead and leave the rest in, and then I will end up harvesting those probably in a week or 2. So I'm hoping that you guys will choose to grow garlic. You can actually save the biggest cloves from the garlic that you had and plant them again in the fall. That way you have big garlic for the following year. So that's the best way to do that. You just want to keep them in a cool, dark, dry place, but not too dry, because you need a little bit of humidity so that they don't fully dry out, especially hardneck garlic. You don't want it to fully dry out if you're going to use the cloves in the fall. So that's just something to kind of think about whenever you're choosing which cloves to save and which ones not to save, which ones to use up. Just make sure that you have it in somewhat humidity but a dark, cool place. A few of the ways that we personally use garlic is for roasting. We like to mince it and put it like as a spread with mayonnaise. We put it in guacamole. We use it for stir fries. We like to mince it on salads. I am a garlic freak, y'all. I love garlic. I will literally put it in any dish I can contemplate on putting it in. We put it in soups, and really anything that you want to add flavor to, that's what we do as a family. Garlic's also known for its medical properties, medicinal properties, and we end up using it for anti-inflammatory food, really to help with my arthritis, will help with inflammation in your body, especially in the allium family, specifically garlic. It's really, really good for inflammation. It's actually great to use for your body whenever you have chills or something along those lines, chills or body aches, fever. You can use it for the cold and flu, especially with kids. It really helps calm them down. You can put it in some honey, some garlic cloves and honey, and then end up drinking it as like a little medicine that will help with that. That's more of a natural way of doing that. So I really hope you guys decide to plant garlic next year or this fall. And I appreciate you guys spending time with me. I hope that y'all are blessed. I hope that you guys are gardening on. And make sure and subscribe to my channel and like the videos and comment. If you have questions about garlic or anything like that, feel free to ask in the comments, and I will hopefully be able to